1 second. That is all it takes to change the course of history, or to end a life. In the high-stakes world of New York's underworld, trust is a currency nobody can afford. But for Sienna, a struggling waitress trying to remain invisible, that 1 second came with a scent. Not the aroma of expensive truffle oil or vintage oak, but the sharp, undeniable sting of bitter almonds. She didn't know the man in the suit. She didn't know he was the city's most feared capo. She only knew that if he took that sip, he was a dead man. This is the story of the night the wine ran red, and a waitress started a war. The air inside Calum, Manhattan's most exclusive rooftop restaurant, always smelled like money. It was a specific blend of imported leather, heavy cologne, and the metallic tang of chilled seafood towers. For Sienna Brooks, it smelled like an exhausting Tuesday. She adjusted the waist of her black slacks, ensuring her white button-down was crisp. She had been working at Calum for 6 months, keeping her head down, her tips high, and her history hidden. She wasn't supposed to be here. A girl with a half-finished chemistry degree and a father currently serving 20 years in Rikers Island didn't usually serve Pinot Noir to senators and hedge fund managers. "Table 4 is yours tonight, Brooks," the floor manager. Henri whispered, grabbing her arm a little too tightly. His face was pale. "Do not screw this up. If they ask for the moon, you find a ladder." Sienna glanced at table 4. It was the private alcove in the back, shielded by velvet curtains. "Who is it?" "Dante Cavallaro," Henri hissed. "And his lieutenants." Sienna felt a cold drop of sweat slide down her spine. Everyone in New York knew the name. The Cavallaro crime family didn't just run the docks anymore. They ran the construction firms, the unions, and half the real estate in Tribeca. Dante Cavallaro was the head of the snake. "I'll handle it," she said, masking the tremor in her voice. She approached the table with a pitcher of water. There were 5 men. 4 of them looked like brawlers squeezed into Armani suits, thick necks, scarred knuckles, eyes that scanned the exits. But the man at the head of the table was different. Dante Cavallaro was younger than the tabloids made him look, perhaps early 30s. He wore a charcoal 3-piece suit that fit him like armor. His hair was dark, swept back, and his eyes were the color of cold brew coffee, black intense, and utterly unreadable. He wasn't speaking. He was listening to the man on his right, a heavy-set guy with a thick mustache named Sal. "The shipment is delayed, Dante. I'm telling you, the Russians are stalling," Sal was saying, his voice a low gravel. Dante raised a hand. The table went silent instantly. He looked up, locking eyes with Sienna. "Water," he said. His voice was smooth, a baritone that vibrated through the air. "Of course, sir," Sienna said. She poured the water with a steady hand, despite her heart hammering against her ribs. She had grown up around men like this, her father's friends. She knew the rules. Be invisible. Be quick. Hear nothing. She retreated to the service station, watching from a distance. The sommelier, a nervous man named Arthur, was approaching with a bottle of wine. It was a 1945 Romanée Conti. That bottle cost more than Sienna's entire college tuition. Arthur uncorked the bottle with trembling hands. He poured a small amount into Dante's glass for the tasting. Dante swirled the deep red liquid. He didn't taste it immediately. He held it up to the light, inspecting the color. "To the new partnership," Sal said, raising his own glass, though his hadn't been poured yet. "Once you approve the vintage Dante." Sienna was standing 10 feet away, arranging silverware on a tray, when the draft from the air conditioning vent shifted. It carried the scent of the open wine bottle toward her. She froze. Her nose had always been sensitive. It was a curse, really. She could smell damp in a wall before the mold appeared. She could smell the ozone before a storm. And because of her father's hobbies in their basement lab years ago, she knew the smell of chemicals. The wine smelled of aged grapes, oak earth. And something else. It was faint sharp and sickly sweet, like marzipan, or crushed fruit pits, bitter almonds. Sienna's mind raced back to her organic chemistry textbooks. Potassium cyanide. When dissolved in an acidic solution like wine, it releases hydrogen cyanide gas. The smell is distinctive, but 40% of the population can't genetically smell it. Dante Cavallaro could be one of those 40%. Arthur the sommelier stepped back, bowing. Dante lifted the glass to his lips. Time seemed to warp. Sienna looked at Sal. The heavy-set man was sweating, his eyes fixed on Dante's throat. He wasn't looking at the wine. He was looking for the swallow. If she was wrong, she would be fired. Blacklisted. Maybe worse. If she was right and she did nothing, a man would die in front of her. Dante the criminal. Dante the killer. Dante the man. The glass touched his bottom lip. Don't breathe. The scream tore out of her throat before she could stop it. Sienna didn't think. She moved. She sprinted the 10 feet, ignoring the sudden turn of heads from the other diners. Just as Dante tilted his head back, Sienna lunged. She didn't grab the glass. That would spill it on him. She grabbed the base of the stem and slapped it sideways hard. The crystal goblet shattered against the adjacent wall. The dark red wine splattered like blood across the pristine white tablecloth and onto the sleeve of Sal's beige jacket. The silence that followed was deafening. In a split second, 3 guns were drawn. The sound of safety catches clicking off echoed in the quiet room. Sienna found herself staring down the barrel of a Glock 19 held by one of the bodyguards. She stood frozen, her chest heaving, her hand still outstretched. Dante hadn't moved. He hadn't flinched. He sat in his chair, his hand still raised in the shape of holding a glass that was no longer there. He slowly turned his head to look at her. His expression wasn't angry. It was terrifyingly calm. "Give me one reason," Dante said softly, "why I shouldn't let my men paint the wall with your brains right now." "The wine," Sienna gasped, her hands shaking as she pointed at the red stain on the cloth. Don't smell it deeply. Just a waft." "Excuse me." Sal stood up, his face purple with rage. "You crazy bitch. That was a $20,000 bottle. She's on something, Dante. Look at her eyes. She's a junkie." "Sit down, Sal," Dante commanded without looking at him. He kept his eyes pinned on Sienna. "Explain." "It smelled like almonds," Sienna whispered. "Bitter almonds. Not the oak. Not the fruit. Cyanide." The word hung in the air like a guillotine blade. Sal's face went from purple to a ghostly white in a fraction of a second. "That's insane. It's a corked bottle. She's crazy." Dante stood up slowly. He was taller than he looked sitting down. He loomed over the table. He picked up the wine bottle which was still sitting open on the table. "Sal," Dante said, his voice dropping an octave. "You picked this bottle. You insisted on the 1945. "I wanted to celebrate, boss," Sal stammered. "I don't know what this girl is talking about." Dante looked at the bottle, then at Sienna. "You're a chemist." I studied it. A long time ago. Dante took a napkin, dipped it into the puddle of spilled wine on the table, and held it cautiously at arm's length. He wafted the air toward his nose, exactly as one is taught in a high school lab. He paused. He looked at Sal. Funny, Dante said, his voice devoid of all warmth. I don't remember the 45 having notes of marzipan. Sal went for his jacket pocket. It was a clumsy move. Before Sal could even grip the handle of his weapon, the man to Dante's left, a silent giant named Rocco, had a knife buried in Sal's hand, pinning it to the mahogany table. Sal screamed a high-pitched, curdling sound. The restaurant erupted into chaos. Diners screamed, chairs scraped. "Clear the room," Dante barked. His men moved instantly, ushering the terrified patrons toward the exits. Sienna stood rooted to the spot, unable to look away from the knife in Sal's hand. Dante walked around the table. He didn't look at Sal. He walked straight to Sienna. He was close enough that she could smell him gunpowder sandalwood and the faint metallic scent of adrenaline. He reached out and she flinched, closing her eyes. But he didn't hit her. He took her chin in his hand, his fingers rough but his grip surprisingly gentle, forcing her to look up at him. "What is your name?" he asked. "Sienna," she whispered. "Sienna Brooks." "Well, Sienna Brooks," Dante said, his thumb brushing her cheekbone. "You just saved my life, and in doing so you just ruined your own. I can go," she stammered. "I won't say anything. I swear." Dante shook his head slowly. Sal wasn't working alone. Cyanide isn't a gangster's weapon. It's a professional's. Someone wanted this to look like a heart attack. If you leave this building, you'll be dead within the hour. "What?" Tears pricked her eyes. I just didn't want you to die." "And now we are bound together," Dante said. He turned to Rocco. "Wrap up Sal. We take him to the warehouse and bring the girl." "No." Sienna backed away. "No, please, I have to go home. My cat." "Forget the cat," Dante said, grabbing her wrist. He pulled her towards the kitchen exit as sirens began to wail in the distance. "You're with me now." As they burst through the kitchen doors into the cold New York alleyway, Sienna realized the truth of the narrator's words. The glass had shattered, and so had her life. She was no longer a waitress. She was a witness, a savior, and a liability. She was the property of the Cavallaro family. Dante shoved her into the back of a waiting black SUV and climbed in beside her. "Drive," he told the driver. Sienna huddled against the door, trembling. Dante looked at her, the streetlights flickering across his sharp features. "Stop shaking, Sienna. If I wanted you dead, you wouldn't be breathing." "Why?" she choked out. "Why me?" Dante pulled a silver cigarette case from his pocket, though he didn't light one. He just turned it over in his fingers. "Because," he said, looking out the window at the passing city, "you're the only person in this city who saw a monster and decided to save him. I need to know why." The silence inside the armored SUV was heavier than the steel plating of the doors. New York City blurred past the tinted windows, streaks of neon amber and white against the wet asphalt. Sienna sat pressed against the leather door panel, her knees drawn up slightly, trying to make herself as small as possible. Dante Cavallaro sat on the other side of the bench seat. He wasn't looking at her. He was typing rapidly on a secure BlackBerry, his thumb moving with a lethal precision. Every few seconds, the streetlights would slice across his face, illuminating the sharp jawline and the smear of Sal's blood that had splashed onto his white cuff. "Where are you taking me?" Sienna asked. Her voice sounded brittle, foreign to her own ears. Dante didn't look up. "Somewhere Sal's friends can't find you, which rules out your apartment, your job, and anywhere you've ever used a credit card." "I need to call my dad," she blurted out. It was a lie. She couldn't call him. He was in a cell in Block C of Rikers Island. But she needed to know if Dante knew. Dante stopped typing. He slowly turned his head, the leather of the seat creaking. "Who is your father, Sienna?" She hesitated. The truth was dangerous, but a lie was fatal. Dante was a man who smelled lies like she smelled cyanide. "Robert Brooks," she whispered. Dante's eyes narrowed, a flicker of recognition passing through the cold obsidian gaze. Robert Brooks, the chemist from Hell's Kitchen, the one who cooked synthetic opioids for the Irish mob in the 90s. Sienna looked down at her hands. They were trembling. He wasn't a criminal. He was a researcher who got leveraged by bad men. Just like... She stopped herself before she said, "Just like you. Just like me." Dante finished for her. A dark amusement tugged at the corner of his mouth. "You think I'm leveraged, Sienna? I am the leverage." He leaned forward, invading her personal space. The scent of him expensive tobacco and raw danger filled the car. "So the waitress has a pedigree. That explains the nose. Your father was a genius, albeit a weak one. He taught me to pay attention," she said, finding a sudden spark of defiance. "He taught me that the things that kill you usually smell sweet first." Dante stared at her for a long moment, assessing her. For the first time, she saw something other than calculation in his eyes. She saw curiosity. "Boss." The driver, a thick-necked man named Vinny, interrupted. "We're approaching the stronghold, the penthouse at the Steinway Tower." "Take the underground garage," Dante commanded, leaning back. "And Vinny, call the cleanup crew at Calum. I want that tablecloth burned. I want the shards of that glass collected. If the police get one trace of that cyanide, the feds will be crawling up my ass by morning." "Understood." The car descended into the bowels of one of Manhattan's thinnest, tallest skyscrapers. The garage was a fortress of concrete and surveillance cameras. As the car stopped, Rocco opened the door. "Upstairs," Dante ordered, gripping Sienna's elbow to guide her out. "Don't try to run. The elevators require a biometric scan. You'd be trapped in the lobby until my security team decided whether to shoot you or arrest you." They rode the elevator in silence to the 80th floor. When the doors opened, Sienna gasped. The penthouse was less a home and more a museum of modern power. Floor-to-ceiling glass walls looked out over the entire expanse of Central Park, a dark rectangle in the glowing grid of the city. The furniture was stark Italian minimalism, black leather, chrome marble. It was cold, beautiful but lifeless. Dante walked straight to a wet bar and poured 2 glasses of amber liquid. He didn't ask what she wanted. He walked back and held a glass out to her. "Bourbon, Pappy Van Winkle. Drink it. It will stop the shaking." Sienna took the glass, her fingers brushing against his. His skin was warm. "I'm not shaking." "You are vibrating, Sienna," he said softly. He took a sip of his own drink, watching her over the rim. "Sal was my capo for 10 years. He held my niece at her christening. If he flipped it, means someone offered him something bigger than loyalty, or they threatened something he loves more than his own life." "Why are you telling me this?" Sienna took a sip. The bourbon burned, pleasantly settling her stomach. "Because you are the variable they didn't account for," Dante said, walking to the window and looking out at the city he ruled. The assassin knew the wine. He knew the vintage. He knew the timing. It was a perfect hit. But he didn't account for a waitress with a degree in organic chemistry and a convicted felon for a father. He turned to face her, his silhouette framed by the city lights. "You saved me, Sienna. In my world, that creates a debt, but it also creates a target. Until I find out who gave Tool that bottle, you are not a guest here. You are a prisoner, for your own safety." Sienna felt the trap snap shut. "For how long?" "As long as it takes," Dante said. He set his glass down. "Rocco will show you to the guest suite. There are clothes there. Shower. Wash the smell of the restaurant off you. We have a long night ahead." "What happens tonight?" she asked, clutching the glass like a shield. Dante's face hardened. "Tonight we find out who tried to kill the king, and you little chemist are going to help me analyze the poison." The guest suite was larger than Sienna's entire apartment in Queens. The bathroom was lined with white marble, and the shower had 6 different jets. She stood under the scalding water for 20 minutes, scrubbing her skin until it was pink, trying to wash away the memory of the knife going through Sal's hand. When she stepped out, she found a set of clothes laid out on the bed. Not a uniform, but a silk blouse and tailored trousers. They were expensive. Too expensive. She dressed quickly and walked out into the main living area. The lights had been dimmed. Dante was sitting at a massive glass dining table. In front of him sat a laptop, a sleek black gun, and a small sealed plastic bag containing a jagged shard of the wine glass she had shattered. "Come here," he said, not looking up from the laptop. Sienna approached cautiously. She smelled takeout food, Thai, basil, and chili. "Sit. Eat." He gestured to a carton of pad Thai. "Rocco tells me you haven't eaten since your shift started at 4. Sienna sat. She realized she was starving. She took a bite, watching him. "You kept the glass." "I need to know the purity," Dante said. "Sal is indisposed at the moment. My men are asking him questions in the basement. He's being stubborn. He keeps screaming about the Venetian." "Does that name mean anything to you?" Sienna paused, a noodle hanging from her fork. "The Venetian, no. It sounds like a hotel." "It's a ghost story," Dante muttered. "An old hitman from the 70s. Supposed to be dead." He pushed the plastic bag toward her. "Look at the residue on the glass. You said it smelled like bitter almonds. High concentration." Sienna leaned in her scientific curiosity, overriding her fear. She looked at the dried red stain on the crystal shard. The smell was potent even from feet away. That means the concentration was lethal within seconds. If you had swallowed even a mouthful, the hydrochloric acid in your stomach would have reacted with the cyanide salts instantly. Respiratory failure within a minute. Cardiac arrest within 3. She looked up at him. "It wasn't just a hit, Dante. It was an execution. They wanted you to suffer, but they wanted it to be quick enough that you couldn't speak." Dante's jaw tightened. "If I can't speak, I can't name my successor. The family goes into chaos. Civil war." He looked at her, his eyes searching hers. "You're smart. Too smart to be serving water to assholes like Sal." "Life happens," Sienna said defensively. "My dad went to prison. My mom got sick. The tuition money went to medical bills. The chemistry degree is on hold." "Not anymore," Dante said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a phone. Not his. A cheap burner phone. "We found this on Sal," Dante said. "It has 1 number saved, and 1 text message sent 5 minutes before you saved my life." He slid the phone across the glass table. Sienna looked at the screen. The message read, The bird is in the nest, pouring the vintage now. But it was the number that made Sienna's blood run cold. She didn't recognize it, but the area code wasn't New York. It was 9414, Westchester. "That's the area code for Sing Sing," she whispered. "Or nearby." "Rikers is 718, Dante corrected her. "But the Valhalla facility is 914. "Why does that matter?" "Because," Dante said, his voice dropping to a dangerous growl. "We traced the signal. The phone that received this text was pinging off a tower directly adjacent to Rikers Island Correctional Facility." Sienna felt the room spin. "My father is in Rikers." "I know," Dante said. "And that creates a very interesting coincidence, doesn't it? The daughter of the alchemist saves me. The signal goes to the prison where the alchemist is held. You think my dad is involved?" Sienna stood up, knocking her chair back. "That's insane. He's been in solitary for 6 months. He hates the mob. He hates you people for what you did to our family." "Hate is a powerful motivator," Dante said calmly. He didn't stand up. He just watched her reaction. "Sit down, Sienna. No, my father is a good man who made a mistake." "Good men don't exist," Dante said flatly. "Only men with interests. Maybe he bought his freedom with my life. Maybe they promised to let him out if he gave them the formula for a poison that couldn't be traced. Cyanide is traceable, not the delivery system," Dante countered. "How did they get it into a sealed 1945 bottle without breaking the cork that takes chemistry, that takes a specialized needle and a solvent that reseals the wax? That is the alchemist's signature." Sienna froze. He was right. Her father used to talk about the integrity of the vessel. How to introduce compounds into sealed containers without breaking the seal. "I need to speak to him," Sienna said, her voice shaking. "Let me talk to him. I can prove he didn't do it." "You can't talk to him," Dante said. He stood up, then walking around the table until he was standing directly in front of her. He towered over her, radiating heat and menace. "Why not?" "Because," Dante said, looking down at his BlackBerry, which had just buzzed again. "My contact at Rikers just messaged me. Half an hour ago, during the chaos at the restaurant. There was a riot in Block C." Sienna stopped breathing. "Is he hurt?" "He's not hurt, Sienna," Dante said, his expression unreadable. "He's gone. Gone like dead. Gone like vanished," Dante said. "Robert Brooks is no longer in his cell. There is a hole in the infirmary wall and 2 dead guards. Your father broke out, Sienna, or someone broke him out." Dante stepped closer, trapping her against the edge of the table. He placed his hands on the glass on either side of her waist. "So now I have to ask you again, and think very carefully before you answer." Dante whispered, his face inches from hers. "Did you save me because you wanted to, or did you save me because you knew the plan had changed and you needed to get close to me?" "I didn't know," Sienna cried, tears spilling over. "I swear I haven't seen him in a year." Dante studied her face. He looked at the tears, the genuine panic in her dilated pupils. He brought a hand up and wiped a tear from her cheek with his thumb. The gesture was confusingly intimate for a man who was practically accusing her of treason. "I believe you," he said softly, "which makes this much worse." "Why?" "Because if he broke out tonight and the hit happened tonight, they are connected. Someone has your father, and they tried to kill me." Dante stepped back, pulling a gun from his waistband and checking the chamber. "Get your shoes on, Sienna. Where are we going? The safe house isn't safe anymore. If they have your father, they know about you. And if they know about you..." Suddenly the lights in the penthouse flickered and died. The entire apartment plunged into darkness. The electronic hum of the smart home system powered down. "Get down!" Dante roared. He tackled Sienna just as the floor-to-ceiling glass window shattered inward. A hail of bullets tore through the room, shredding the leather sofa where they had been standing seconds ago. Repelling lines dropped from the roof. Dark figures in tactical gear swung through the broken window, silhouetted against the city lights. Dante rolled, covering Sienna's body with his own. He fired 2 shots into the darkness. Pop, pop, and one of the shadows dropped. "Crawl to the kitchen!" Dante yelled over the gunfire. "Go now!" Sienna scrambled across the floor, glass cutting into her palms. The smell of bitter almonds was gone, replaced by the smell of cordite and blood. The war had started, and she was right in the middle of the kill zone. The kitchen of the penthouse was a sleek, stainless steel corridor of death. Bullets pinged off the marble countertops, sending shards of stone flying like shrapnel. The noise was deafening, a chaotic symphony of shattering glass and automatic gunfire. Dante kept a hand firmly on the back of Sienna's neck, keeping her low. They were huddled behind a massive industrial refrigerator. His breathing was steady, rhythmic, a stark contrast to Sienna's, which came in short, terrified gasps. "Rocco!" Dante shouted into his earpiece. "Status." "Too many of them, boss." Rocco's voice crackled, sounding strained. "They came down from the roof. Breaching charges on the terrace doors. I'm holding the hallway, but I can't hold it forever." "Get to the service elevator," Dante commanded. "Negative," Rocco said. A burst of gunfire drowned him out for a second. "They cut the power. We're stuck. I'll buy you time. Take the chute." "Rocco, go get the girl safe." The line went dead. Sienna looked at Dante. For a split second, the mask of the ruthless Mafia Don slipped, revealing a flicker of raw pain. Rocco wasn't just a bodyguard. He was family. But the mask slammed back into place instantly. "Up!" Dante ordered, pulling Sienna to her feet. "We're moving." "Where?" Sienna cried, flinching as a bullet punched a hole in the refrigerator door, inches from her face, spraying them with condensed milk. "We're 80 floors up." "The laundry chute," Dante said, dragging her toward a narrow utility closet at the back of the kitchen. He kicked the door open. Inside was a metal hatch used for sending linens down to the cleaning staff in the basement. It was tight dark and smelled of stale detergent. "You have to be kidding me," Sienna stammered. "It's a straight drop to the sub-basement laundry cart," Dante said. He holstered his gun and grabbed a bundle of chef's aprons hanging on a hook. He wrapped them around his hands and arms. "I go first to clear the landing. Count to 3, then follow. Keep your arms crossed over your chest. Don't breathe until you hit the bottom." "Dante, I can't." He grabbed her face, his bloody hands framing her cheeks. The intensity in his dark eyes silenced her. "You saved my life tonight, Sienna. Now let me save yours. Jump!" He didn't wait for an answer. He threw himself into the dark metal void. Sienna stood alone in the closet. The gunfire was getting louder. She could hear heavy boots crunching on the glass in the living room. They were coming. 1, 2, 3. She closed her eyes and jumped. The slide was a terrifying, claustrophobic blur of friction and speed. The metal groaned around her. She picked up velocity, the air rushing past her ears, screaming in the darkness. Just when she thought she would vomit from the G-force, she shot out into open air. She landed hard on something soft but firm, a pile of heavy canvas laundry bags. Dante was already there, pulling her off the cart, before she could even catch her breath. "Move!" he hissed. They were in the sub-basement, a concrete labyrinth of pipes and humming generators. It was hot down here, smelling of grease and ozone. "My car is in the VIP garage," Dante said, leading her through a maze of pipes, "but they'll have that covered. We need another way." They reached a heavy steel door marked Maintenance. Dante shot the lock off one clean shot and kicked it open. Inside the garage, chaos reigned. The fire alarm was blaring now. Sprinklers were raining down on the millions of dollars worth of Ferraris and Bentleys. Dante scanned the rows. There. He pointed to a nondescript grey Ford Econoline van parked in the corner. Plumbing and heating was stenciled on the side. "A plumber's van?" Sienna asked, wiping soot from her forehead. "It's not a plumber's van," Dante said, running toward it. He pulled a key from under the wheel well. "It's a clean car, untraceable, Kevlar lining in the doors, 500 horsepower engine under the hood." He threw the back doors open. "Get in the back. Stay down until I say so." Sienna scrambled into the back of the van, among pipes and toolboxes. Dante jumped into the driver's seat. The engine roared to life, not with the rattle of a work van, but with the deep, throaty growl of a racing engine. He peeled out of the spot just as the elevator doors to the garage pinged open. 3 men in tactical gear stepped out, raising assault rifles. "Hold on!" Dante yelled. He didn't aim for the exit ramp. He aimed for the gunmen. Sienna screamed as the van surged forward. Dante swerved at the last second, clipping the lead gunman and sending the others diving behind a concrete pillar. Bullets raked the side of the van, sounding like hail on a tin roof, but the reinforced plating held. Dante slammed the van into gear and tore up the exit ramp, smashing through the wooden barrier arm and bursting out onto 57th Street. The city was wet and blurred by the rain. Sirens were wailing from every direction, converging on the tower they had just left. Dante wove through traffic with the precision of a surgeon running red lights drifting around corners, putting distance between them and the smoking ruin of his penthouse. He drove for 20 minutes in silence, checking his mirrors constantly, taking a convoluted route that switched back on itself 3 times to ensure they weren't being tailed. Finally, he slowed down. They were heading north, crossing the Willis Avenue Bridge, into the Bronx. The glitter of Manhattan faded behind them, replaced by the industrial shadows of warehouses and shipping yards. "You can come up front now," Dante said, his voice rough. Sienna crawled between the seats and sat in the passenger seat. Her hands were shaking uncontrollably again. She looked at Dante. He was staring straight ahead, his jaw locked tight. Blood was soaking through the white dress shirt on his left side, just above the hip. "You're bleeding," she whispered. "Grazed," he said dismissively. "Just a flesh wound." "That's a lot of blood for a graze, Dante. I've had worse." He glanced at her. "Are you hurt?" "No, I think I left my soul back on the 80th floor. Dante let out a short, dry chuckle. "You did good, Sienna. Most people freeze. You moved." "Where are we going?" "My world has burned down tonight," Dante said, his eyes scanning the dark streets of the Bronx. "Sal betrayed me. My stronghold is compromised. Someone has your father. We can't trust the safe houses. We need to go somewhere nobody knows exists." He turned the van down a narrow alleyway, behind an old brick building with boarded-up windows. A faded sign above the door read, "Ritchie's Apothecary, Estima 1920. "What is this place?" Sienna asked. "My grandfather's first business," Dante said, killing the engine. "Before the drugs, before the guns, the Cavalleros were pharmacists. Legit ones. Nobody has been in here for 30 years. It's off the grid. No cameras. No internet. No heat. He turned to her, the darkness of the alley pressing in around them. Welcome home, Siensana. The Ford Econoline van rattled to a halt in a desolate alley in the South Bronx. The engine died, replaced by the relentless drumming of rain against the metal roof. Dante didn't move. He gripped the steering wheel knuckles white, his breath hitching. The adrenaline that had fueled their escape was evaporating, leaving behind the cold reality of a bullet wound. We're here, he gritted out. Richie's apothecary, my grandfather's place. Nobody has looked for it in 30 years. He stumbled out, punching a code into a hidden keypad. The steel door groaned open, revealing a space that smelled of time-dried lavender, old paper and dust. Dante flipped a breaker, and a single string of naked bulbs flickered to life, illuminating rows of empty amber jars. He made it 3 steps before his knees buckled. Dante! Sienna lunged, catching his weight. He was heavy, a wall of dense muscle and heat. She guided him to a wooden stool. I'm fine, he lied, pressing a hand to his side. Blood seeped through his fingers, staining the stolen grey work coat. You are going into shock, Sienna snapped, fear transmuting into clinical focus. Where is the kit? Back room, under the floorboard. Sienna retrieved the metal box and a bottle of harsh vodka. When she returned, Dante had unbuttoned his shirt. The wound on his left oblique was an angry, jagged furrow. It was bleeding sluggishly, but it was deep. I have to stitch it, she said, her voice trembling. Pour the vodka. Dante didn't hesitate. He doused the wound. His body went rigid, a guttural growl tearing from his throat, but he didn't pull away. Sienna knelt between his knees, threading the needle. Talk to me, Dante gasped, sweat beading on his forehead. Tell me about the alchemist. He wasn't a criminal, Sienna said, piercing his skin. Pierce. Pull. Not. He was a professor. My mum got sick. We needed money. He did one job for the mob to pay for chemo. Just one. But the devil never lets you go after one job. She tied off the final stitch and taped a gauze pad over it. Done. She looked up. Dante was staring at her, the pain in his obsidian eyes warring with a dark, intense curiosity. He reached out his rough thumb, brushing a stray lock of hair from her cheek. The touch sent a jolt of electricity straight to her core. You have the hands of a surgeon, he whispered, and the eyes of a survivor. Why did you save me, Sienna? You could have let me drink it. I don't know, she breathed, trapped in his gaze. Maybe I'm tired of death winning. Dante leaned in. The air in the dusty room vanished. You should be terrified of me. I am. Good. He kissed her. It tasted of copper and vodka, a desperate, claiming collision. Sienna gripped his bare shoulders, grounding herself in his heat. For a moment, the war outside didn't exist. There was only the man who had kidnapped her, and the undeniable magnetic pull between them. Dante pulled back abruptly, resting his forehead against hers. We can't. You are the leverage. If I become weak, we both die. He buttoned his coat, masking the vulnerability. He walked to the window, peering through the boards. We need to think. The text on Sal's phone. The bird is in the nest. Sienna went cold. Dante. My father never called me Sienna. His nickname for me was Little Bird. Dante froze. He turned slowly. If the text meant you, Then they weren't telling your father he was safe. They were telling him you were in position. They used me. Sienna realized horror dawning. They knew I had the nose. They knew I'd check the wine. It wasn't an assassination. It was a Trojan horse to get me into your house. They wanted you, Dante said grimly, because you are the key to whatever your father is hiding. Suddenly the silence was shattered. The ancient rotary phone on the counter, a deadline for decades, screamed into the quiet room. Dante stared at it. They were found. He picked up the receiver. "Speak," a distorted voice answered. "Hello, Dante. I believe you have something that belongs to me. Bring the girl to the Navy Yard. Dock 4. Midnight. And if I don't, then I send you the alchemist's head in a box." Dante hung up. He looked at Sienna, his face hardening into stone. "Who was it?" she asked. "The Venetian," Dante said. "My uncle. And we have an hour to prepare for war." The Brooklyn Navy Yard was a ghost town of rusted iron and rotting wood battered by the relentless freezing rain. The East River looked like black oil churning violently against the pilings. Dante parked the van a quarter-mile away, hidden behind a stack of shipping containers. He checked his weapon one last time, a Sig Sauer P-26 he had retrieved from a hidden compartment in the apothecary. He handed a smaller pistol, a snub-nosed revolver, to Sienna. "It has 6 shots," he said, his voice low and devoid of emotion. "It has no safety. You point and you pull. Do not hesitate." Sienna took the cold metal in her hands. It felt heavy, a physical weight of the line she was about to cross. "I've never fired a gun." "Aim for the center of the mass," Dante said. He looked at her, and his gaze softened for a fraction of a second. He reached out, cupping the back of her head, pulling her forehead against his. "If things go wrong, if I go down, you run. You don't look back. You disappear." "I'm not leaving without my father," she whispered. "Then let's go get him." They moved through the shadows of the shipyard, moving from cover to cover. Dock 4 was a massive cavernous warehouse with corrugated metal walls. Light spilled from a gap in the sliding bay doors. Inside the space was vast smelling of diesel and seawater. In the center, illuminated by portable construction lights, was a scene straight out of a nightmare. Robert Brooks sat tied to a metal chair. He looked older than Sienna remembered. His hair was white, his face bruised, his glasses missing. He was shivering. Standing over him was a man in a pristine tan trench coat, holding a cane with a silver handle. He was older, perhaps 60, with silver hair slicked back, and a face that looked like it had been chiseled from granite. Lucio Cavallaro, the Venetian. Surrounding them were 6 armed men mercenaries, by the look of their gear. High-end military tech. This wasn't a street gang. This was a private army. Dante stepped into the light, his hands held out to his sides, showing he wasn't drawing his weapon yet. "Lucio!" Dante's voice boomed through the warehouse. The older man turned, a smile stretching across his face that didn't reach his eyes. "Dante, my favorite nephew. You look terrible. That side, it's bleeding again," Dante said, walking steadily forward. Sienna stayed in the shadows of a forklift, 20 feet back, gun shaking in her hand. "I didn't aim to kill you at the restaurant," Lucio said, leaning on his cane. "I aimed to test you, to see if you had lost your edge. And you have Dante. You let a waitress disarm my best plan." "Why?" Dante stopped, 10 feet away. "You retired. You have the villa in Como. You have the money. It's not about money." Lucio snapped, his composure cracking. He struck a nearby crate with his cane. "It's about respect. You run this family like a corporation. You make deals with the Russians, with the Chinese. You forgot who we are. We are cavalieros. We don't negotiate. We conquer." He gestured to Robert Brooks. "So I decided to reset the board. Kill you. Frame the Russians using the Cyanide, a favorite of theirs, and take back control." "And the girl?" Dante asked, his eyes flickering toward the shadows where Sienna hid. "Loose ends." Lucio shrugged. "She has the nose. A genetic anomaly. Dangerous. Just like her father." Robert Brooks lifted his head. His lip was split. "Sienna." "Run," he croaked. Lucio spun around and backhanded the old man. "Quiet, alchemist." Sienna gasped. The sound was faint, but in the echoing warehouse it was enough. Lucio's head snapped toward the forklift. "Bring her out." Two mercenaries moved toward Sienna's hiding spot. She panicked. She stepped out, raising the revolver. "Don't touch me!" she screamed. Lucio laughed. "Look at that. The little bird has claws. Put the gun down, my dear, or I put a bullet in your father's knee." One of the mercenaries aimed his rifle at Robert's leg. Sienna froze. Slowly she lowered the gun. A mercenary snatched it from her hand and shoved her forward until she was standing next to Dante. "So romantic," Lucio sneered, circling them. "The king and the pawn. You know, Dante, I expected you to sacrifice her. That's what your father would have done." "My father was a monster," Dante said coldly. "And so are you." "I am a necessary evil," Lucio replied. He pulled a gold lighter from his pocket and flicked it open. He looked at a pile of crates near the wall marked hazardous materials. "Sienna." Dante said, his voice incredibly calm. "Do you remember what you told me about the smell of bitter almonds?" Sienna looked at him confused. "Yes. What happens?" Dante continued, locking eyes with her. "When you mix potassium cyanide with an oxidizer, like, say, the industrial bleach sitting on that pallet over there." Sienna's eyes darted to the pallet behind Lucio. Blue barrels, sodium hypochlorite, industrial strength bleach used for cleaning ship hulls. But there was no cyanide there, just bleach. Then she saw it. On the floor near the bleach was a spilled bag of white powder from where the mercenaries had been moving cargo. It wasn't cyanide. It was labeled ammonium nitrate, fertilizer. Dante didn't know the chemistry. He was guessing. But he was signaling her to use the environment. Bleach and ammonia. Chloramine gas. Or, if the ammonium nitrate was mixed with fuel. "Dante," she whispered. "The floor is wet. Diesel fuel." Dante smiled. It was a terrifying, wolfish smile. "Lucio!" Dante shouted. "You want the old way, fine. Let's do it the old way." Dante didn't reach for his gun. He reached for his lighter. Lucio looked confused. "What are you doing?" "Burn it all down," Dante said. He threw the lighter. Not at Lucio, but at the puddle of diesel fuel leaking from the old forklift Sienna had been hiding behind. The fuel caught instantly. A line of fire raced across the concrete floor. It didn't hit the bleach. It hit the stack of old oily rags and wooden pallets next to the ammonium nitrate. "Fire!" a mercenary shouted. "Kill them!" Lucio screamed. But the distraction worked. As the flames roared up, creating a wall of heat and smoke, Dante moved. Dante didn't go for Lucio. He dove for Sienna and her father. He tackled them both, knocking the chair over and shielding them with his body as the mercenaries opened fire. Bullets sparked off the concrete floor around them. "Get behind the pillar!" Dante roared, dragging Robert by his collar, while shoving Sienna toward a thick concrete support beam. The warehouse was filling with black smoke. The fire was spreading fast, licking at the chemical barrels. "The bleach!" Sienna coughed, her eyes watering. "If the fire melts those plastic barrels, the fumes will kill us all before the bullets do." "Then we have to be quick," Dante said. He popped out from behind the pillar and fired 3 shots. 2 mercenaries dropped. "Stay down," he ordered. Dante sprinted into the smoke. He was a shadow, a wraith moving through the haze. He knew this game. Lucio's men were paid soldiers. They fought with tactics and cover. Dante fought with rage. Sienna untied her father's hands with trembling fingers. "Dad, are you okay?" "Sienna?" Robert wept, hugging her. "I'm so sorry. I had to make it. They said they would kill you if I didn't." "It's okay." She soothed him, scanning the room for a weapon. She saw her snub-nosed revolver lying on the floor, 10 feet away. "Stay here." Sienna crawled toward the gun. The heat was intense now. The plastic barrels of bleach were beginning to warp. Suddenly, a hand grabbed her ankle. She screamed as she was dragged backward. Lucio stood over her, his face twisted in a rictus of hate. He had lost his cane. He held a silver pistol pointed at her head. "You ruined everything," Lucio spat. "You little witch." He cocked the hammer. Bang! Lucio's body jerked, but he didn't fall. He looked down at his chest. There was no blood. He looked up. Dante was standing across the fire, gun raised, but Dante was out of ammo. The slide was locked back. Lucio laughed, a wet, hacking sound. "Empty." He raised his gun at Dante. "Goodbye, nephew." Sienna's hand found the revolver on the floor. She rolled onto her back. She didn't think about the recoil. She didn't think about the morality. She thought about the wine glass. She thought about the man who had stitched his own wound in an apothecary. She aimed for the center of the mass. Crack, crack. She pulled the trigger twice. Lucio stumbled back. 2 red blossoms appeared on his tan trench coat. He looked at Sienna, his eyes wide with shock. He opened his mouth to speak, but only blood came out. He collapsed backward, landing in the chemical spill that was slowly mixing with the fire foam. The warehouse groaned. The metal roof was warping from the heat. "Dante!" Sienna screamed. Dante ran to her. He pulled her up, then grabbed her father. "We have to go." "The fumes!" They stumbled out of the warehouse into the cold, rainy night, just as the barrels inside ruptured. A cloud of acrid yellow-green gas billowed out of the bay doors, mixing with the black smoke. They ran until their lungs burned, collapsing behind the stack of shipping containers where the van was hidden. Dante leaned against the metal, gasping for air, clutching his side. The stitches had definitely torn. Fresh blood stained his coat. Sienna sat on the wet asphalt, holding her father's hand, but her eyes were on Dante. He looked at her. The rain washed the soot from his face. He looked exhausted, battered, and more alive than she had ever seen him. He walked over to her and knelt down, ignoring the pain. He took her hands that were now stained with gun oil and residue. "You didn't run," he said softly. "I told you." Sienna replied, her voice steady. "I'm tired of death winning." Dante looked at Robert Brooks. "Robert, you are a dead man. The alchemist died in that fire. Do you understand?" Robert nodded, swallowing hard. "I understand." "I will set you up," Dante said. "Switzerland, or fierce Patagonia. somewhere nobody looks. You will have money. You will have safety. But you can never come back to New York." Robert looked at Sienna. "And my daughter." Dante turned his gaze back to Sienna. The intensity of it made her shiver despite the heat of the distant fire. "She has a choice," Dante said. "She can go with you, disappear, start over. Or, Sienna asked. "Or she stays," Dante said. "With me, in the wreckage." Sienna looked at her father. She saw the love there, but she also saw the distance. He belonged to a past that was already gone. Then she looked at Dante, the man who had saved her, the man she had saved, the man who tasted like danger and smelled like a storm. She realized that the waitress who served water at Calum was gone too. She had burned up in that warehouse. "Dad," she said softly, kissing her father's cheek. "Go. Be free." Robert Brooks looked at Dante, then at his daughter. He saw the shift in her eyes, the steel that hadn't been there yesterday. "Be careful, little bird," he whispered. Robert walked toward the van. Dante stood up and offered his hand to Sienna. "There is no going back after this, Sienna. You will be the target. You will be the weakness they try to exploit. You will never be safe." Sienna took his hand. She pulled herself up until she was standing toe-to-toe with the devil of New York. She leaned in her lips, brushing his ear. "Let them try," she whispered. "I know how to mix the poison now." Dante wrapped his arm around her waist, pulling her flush against him. He kissed her not with desperation this time, but with a possessive, burning promise. Behind them, the warehouse collapsed with a roar, sending sparks spiraling into the black sky. But neither of them looked. They were only looking at each other. The king had his queen, and the city was theirs for the taking. Sienna Brooks didn't just smell the cyanide. She inhaled the darkness of a world she was never meant to enter. From a waitress in the shadows to the woman standing beside the throne, her journey proves that in the game of power, chemistry is the most dangerous weapon of all. She saved the monster, and in return he gave her the kingdom. But remember, every kingdom is built on ashes. What would you have done? Would you have let the glass touch his lips, or would you have started a war? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of betrayal, science and dark romance, please hit that like button. It helps the channel immensely. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you don't miss the next story. Until next time, watch what you drink.